Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a microscopic world that is completely invisible to the naked eye, yet it literally dictates every single aspect of our existence. We're going to take a really close look at the true unit of life.
So think about this for a second. What is the fundamental building block of you? It's easy to just look in the mirror and see a single unified person staring back. But you are actually a remarkably complex multicellular organism. Everything we're about to discuss today is happening inside of you, by the trillions, right at this very second. It's this bustling, hidden universe that keeps you alive, active, and functioning.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the foundation of life. Then, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. After that, we'll take a tour of the organelles, zoom in on the chromosome structure, and finally, wrap things up with the functions of the cell. Part 1. The foundation of life.
Life has an incredibly deep history. We're talking about 3.5 billion years ago when the very first primitive cells, known as prokaryotes, evolved. These were tough extremophiles that thrived in the Earth's harsh, ancient environment for millions of years, some surviving off chemical energy and others using the sun's energy. Now, fast forward way ahead to the year 1665. An English natural philosopher named Robert Hooke was looking through a compound microscope and discovered these fascinating honeycomb-like structures. Because they looked like tiny compartments, he named them cells, which actually translates from Latin as small rooms. But interestingly enough, it wasn't until much later in the 1950s that scientists fully postulated the distinct concepts of those ancient prokaryotic cells and the much more complex eukaryotic cells.
And that history brings us to a truly monumental milestone in biology. Back in the 1830s, scientists Schneider and Schwann formulated the groundbreaking cell theory. So the crucial takeaway here is this. They established that all living organisms are composed of cells, and that the cell is the basic functional and structural unit of life. Later on, Rudolf Virchow added another vital piece to this puzzle, the realization that all cells arise only from pre-existing cells. Basically, you absolutely cannot have life without a prior cell to build it.
Section 2. Prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. Before we zoom in too far, we first have to distinguish between cellular makeup. On one hand, you have unicellular organisms, like the amoeba or paramecium, where just a single cell is the entire independent organism. Pretty wild, right? Then you have multicellular organisms. Humans, plants, animals. We are made of incredibly vast networks of cells, all working together in perfect harmony.
Anatomically, these cells fall into two very distinct categories. The word prokaryon translates to before nuclei. Prokaryotes, like bacteria, are tiny. We're talking just 0.2 to 2.0 micrometers. They have no true nucleus, their DNA is arranged in a circular fashion, and they reproduce asexually through binary fission. Conversely, eukaryon means true nuclei, and eukaryotic cells, they represent a massive leap in complexity. They are so much larger, ranging from 10 to 100 micrometers. They possess a true nucleus, have linear DNA, and are completely packed with membrane-bound organelles. Just about every multicellular organism out there, including you, is a eukaryote.
All right, let's keep zooming in. Section 3. Tour of the organelles. Stepping inside the eukaryotic cell is honestly like entering a bustling, highly coordinated factory. And every factory needs a central management office, right? That's the nucleus. Surrounded by a protective nuclear membrane that strictly controls what enters and exits, this vault safely keeps the master blueprints. It contains chromatin, which is your DNA, and a structure called the nucleolus, which makes RNA and plays an absolutely crucial role in synthesizing proteins. The nucleus essentially calls the shots for all cell activities and is the vital site of inheritance.
So how exactly does this factory get its power? Meet the mitochondria. You've probably heard it called the powerhouse of the cell, and for good reason. This organelle performs aerobic respiration. It takes in nutrients and creates energy in the form of ATP, which is then utilized to power every single piece of machinery in our cellular factory. And it does this incredibly efficiently, using its inner folds, which are called cristae. Moving right along the factory floor, we find the manufacturing assembly line, the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. Now, this comes in two varieties. The rough ER is studded with ribosomes. You can think of them as the tiny workers on the assembly line actively synthesizing proteins. Then you have the smooth ER. Lacking those ribosomes, it handles a totally different job, focusing on lipid synthesis and acting as a vital detoxification center for the cell.
Once those proteins are built, they need to be processed and shipped out. Enter the Golgi apparatus, which basically acts as the shipping department of the factory.
It modifies, packages, and transports proteins by producing secretory vesicles. The Golgi also forms lysosomes. Now, you can think of lysosomes as the highly efficient recycling and waste disposal units. They contain potent digestive enzymes designed to break down worn-out organelles or foreign substances. In fact, they are so intensely effective at this job that they are sometimes referred to as suicide bags.
Before we leave the factory floor, I have to point out that plant cells have some really unique infrastructure that animal cells completely lack. Plant factories have their own built-in solar panels called plastids, specifically chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll to synthesize food through photosynthesis. Plants also feature massive water storage tanks known as large central vacuoles. These serve as storage sacs and are absolutely critical for maintaining turgor pressure, which is what keeps the plant rigid and upright.
Section 4. The chromosome structure.
And this brilliantly illustrates the anatomy of a dividing cell's nucleus. These thread-like structures are chromosomes. They are entirely made up of DNA and proteins, and they carry literally all of your genetic information. Homologous chromosomes are bound tightly together at the centromere, complete with kinetochores and distinct sister chromatids. These structures are the physical carriers of inheritance, ensuring that as cells divide, whether through mitosis in eukaryotes or binary fission in prokaryotes, the exact right blueprints are passed on to the next generation.
Finally, Section 5. Functions of the cell.
Ultimately, to keep the organism alive, the cell executes a few fundamental actions. It manages metabolism, which is a delicate balance of building up complex molecules, called anabolism, and breaking down nutrients for energy, called catabolism. Beyond that, the cell drives growth, handles reproduction to form new cells, and crucially, reacts to environmental changes through a continuous response to stimuli.
Which brings us to our final thought. The source material states it perfectly. Every single activity of a living organism is the direct outcome of cellular activity. Knowing everything we just explored, from those ancient extremophiles 3.5 billion years ago to the energy-pumping mitochondria and the DNA-packed chromosomes currently operating inside of you, isn't it absolutely incredible that every single breath you take, every thought you have, and every movement you make is simply the outcome of these invisible cellular actions? I hope this explainer has given you a newfound appreciation for the magnificent, microscopic world that makes you, well, you. Thank you so much for joining me on this microscopic journey.